What's going on? It's Wednesday. It's time for another restaurant expert roundup. I've got Jeremy, a guy from the technology space, which apparently a lot of you restaurants have no clue about. We're going to dig into it and try and get you guys out of the 90s and into 2021 and beyond. Jeremy, what's going on in Texas, my man?
Not too much. This is first fall in Texas for the family, but it's been good. It's been good so far. As we were talking about pre-show, I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm sure they're excited to have you. California lost a great one. California's losing a lot of great ones.
Yes. It's a shame. It's a shame the way things have happened out there. But yeah, there's lots of people that were adding a lot of value to the economy that aren't there anymore.
Well, I've been hearing for like 30 years that there's some fault line where the state's going to float away. So maybe I'm going to go buy beachfront property like in Nevada that will eventually be beachfront. But we'll find out when that happens. So
they've been claiming that my whole life, and I was there for 40 years, and it never happened. So I just decided I wasn't going that route.
So let's talk about technology. So real quick, I guess, tell everybody who you are, tell them about the podcast, so that way they know that I'm talking to a freaking restaurant technology genius, so we can dig into the topic.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. And Jeremy Julian, I run an organization that sells restaurant technology. But about 5 years ago, I started to do something similar to what you guys do on your show by interviewing experts. I lived this stuff for the last 25 years. I just celebrated 25 years at the company. And so I've been doing restaurant technology and really not a whole lot else other than restaurant technology. I'm involved in really big brands, really small brands. Get to see it all, get on the front edge of stuff that is just coming out, from robotics to AI, all the way to kind of your basic blocking and tackling of point of sale and loyalty and online ordering and third-party delivery and all of those kind of things.
And the podcast that you started those years ago, the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast, how many episodes have you guys done now? I know it's 100 plus, right?
I think I just posted 112, 113. I don't know how quickly this will come out, and we're well over 160,000 downloads at this point. So got some good traction. I know you were on the show about a year ago, I think. And so for those listeners that like more of Matt Plapp and what he does, go check out the podcast, because it was an awesome conversation back then, and love to have you back on the show at some point in the future too.
Love to be back on. So the conversation I want to talk about today, and it cracks me up that this is even still a conversation, because my roots go back to 1999 when I got out of college and I started using ACT. My whole thing was, okay, I understood the value of data for my sales career in radio. I wasn't even a restaurant or a car dealership. I was a guy selling radio advertising, but I knew that in order for me to be the next level, I needed to have the data of, let's say, Michelle from the agency who bought Ohio Lotteries Media. And I needed to know her birthday, and that her husband was from Cincinnati, and that she loved Graders, it was like raspberry chip ice cream. And I had all this data in there so that I could communicate with her better in the future. And at that time, I also professionally started learning about websites and email marketing. And as my career progressed in 2008, I started our company we have now, which is now known as America's Best Restaurants. And we've always been technology. And I remember 2008 talking to restaurants about this thing called Facebook, about email marketing, about texting. I remember 7-8 years ago talking about online ordering. And I deal with a lot of independents, but I see two things. Number one, I see that independents literally take 5 to 6 years to get to a point of, oh shit, that. There's a video I'll share in the comments on this down the road once it's up live or posted, of Gary Vee talking at, what was it called? Traffic and Conversions Conference in the spring of 2016. And if you watch it, one of my new employees watched it 2 days ago, because it's an onboarding video for our team. And he goes, wow, if I wouldn't have known that was from 5 years ago, I would have thought it was this year. Now, Gary knew the stuff that we should be doing now 5 years ago. Nobody's doing it still. The other side of it is that I deal with a lot of big companies as well. Not a lot, but I deal with a fair amount. And they're using technology, but then they're not equipped to actually use it.
Yes.
They get all this great data from a point of sale they all love their freaking loyalty programs. They love their apps. And then the data just sits there with cobwebs on it. So I guess what are some of the things technology wise that you see that everybody should be adopted to by now that they still aren't?
Well, and I think, for a reference point, I'd go to the restauranttechnologyguys.com website. I have the top 5 solutions that you have to have. And it really starts with a point of sale, because if you don't know what you're selling to whom, then it's almost impossible to do anything in the way of marketing, which I know you're pretty big on. Understanding that you need to have a website, which is really your front door and the way people interact with your brand, because it's amazing how many times you even go. We talked about the fact that I moved to Dallas, and I'll see a restaurant driving down the road. I'm like, let me jump on my phone and see what it is, and I can't even find their website. All I can find is a Yelp page or a Google reviews page. I don't even know who they are and what they sell. I'm new to town. I travel a lot like you, and I want to be able to know what these places are. So you got to have a website. You got to have the ability to order online with these people. And it's amazing. And I know you live in the same space that I do, how many people don't even have those basic things before they start getting into loyalty, before they start getting into third-party delivery integrations, before they start to understand what food costing is, what inventory costing is, and all of those kind of things. And so it's amazing. The core really, in my mind, is a technology solution that you can track. What do you sell? What do you sell it for? How often are you selling it? What are your sales numbers? What are your labor systems? How many people are coming in and how many people aren't coming in? Not only as customers, but employees. Again, you work within the restaurants. How many times do you go into a restaurant that has nobody in it and has 6 servers standing around a server station talking to each other, texting with each other? Why are we wasting the labor to have them sit there when they don't necessarily need to be there? So those are probably the 5 core systems. I know we'll get into a bunch more, but those things have to be there. And it's amazing, to your point, how few people even have that and how far behind the curve they are in 2021.
I had one of my producers. So we have our show, America's Best Restaurants. We travel, they film. They're in like 2 cities today filming. There's 2 vans now. And we have a team of guys behind it that I call list builders, that find restaurants that look like places we should talk to and show to consumers. And one of the places one of our guys showed me this morning, like, man, this place looks awesome. But dude, look at their website. He just wanted to show me because it was funny. I literally think Al Gore created it in like the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
And a website, which cracks me up, is it's equivalent to if I go into a restaurant. I know, because I own a gym. I have a building that we own that's 9,000 square feet. I've spent money on paint and trim and all the fancy crap. Like, we're in the studio now, all the foam on the wall. I know what it costs to do stuff. And you can literally make your bathroom look good for a couple $100. And I walk into a lot of restaurants and their bathrooms smell, they're dirty, they haven't been repainted. They got, for a good time, call Carla. It's like, at what point are you going to fix that? Well, it's the same as the website. You can get a 1-page website probably for free from a lot of technology companies in exchange for using some of their services, but even worst case scenario for a couple $100.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I really equate it to your digital front door. It's the way people interact with your brand. And again, as sad as it is, there's a bunch of brands that I haven't gone to where I drive down the road, no different than you talked about, and I see it and I go, oh, that place looks cool. I go to their website and I'm like, there is no way I'm stepping foot inside that place. If they can't take care of that, and this is one of those old restaurant adages, go into the bathroom, see how clean it is.
Yep.
You'll know how clean the kitchen is.
Yep.
And again, the audience here is restaurateurs. They know if you're not taking care of those little things, I can promise you the food's not going to be clean. The kitchen's not going to be, taken care of, all of those kind of things. And so I try and make it important for them to do those things, because those are the foundational building blocks that you have to have in order to be relevant in today's day and age. Because as we've talked about through the pandemic even, and it's been on our show quite a bit, the last 2 years, people have had to adopt different modalities to even interact with their guests, because dining rooms got shut down in certain places, the ability to do some of those things. So you had to get digital, you had to get digital native and start to understand those things. But if you're not also doing what you started with, which is understanding who your customers are, because most times they'll tell you who they are and they'll tell you what they want, no different than that lady telling you she liked chocolate chip ice cream or whatever it was. The customers are going to tell you those things, and now use it to your advantage to get into their pocketbooks or to get into their wallets to make sure that they're spending money with you rather than with your competitor.
Yeah. And you mentioned, there's those basic blocks. I call it the cell phone effect, that you've got, if I look at my phone now and I've got 5 bars, well, in order to get to the top bar, I got to have bar 1 and 2. And so there's things that you've got to have now. You've got to have a website. You've got to have a digital menu, not a freaking PDF or a picture. You need to have a menu on your website. You need to have links to how to order, how to contact. I had one the other day. I couldn't find their phone number.
Yep.
I'm like, Jesus, there's nothing.
Or their address. Like, those are the worst too. You're like, how do I even get there?
How do I find you?
Uh-huh.
And so there's those basic elements. And then what that leads to is, I mean, especially now, if you're under 45 or 50, my dad's 75, he's Mr. Technology. He knows how to use a lot of this stuff except for speakerphone on his phone. That's a different conversation. But it kills your credibility. It's like walking into a gym and the trainer being 400 pounds and looking like Will Ferrell from Semi-Pro. You're probably not going to have much belief that you're going to advance physically. Well, restaurant the same way. Of a consumer, especially somebody under 40 or 30, when they expect to go to Facebook and Instagram, see pictures, current information, they expect a website good. But I think all of that also leads itself to somewhere else, which I want to get your opinion on. So I had a podcast in here last week. A guy named Manny, who has a restaurant up in Philadelphia, was in town to visit family, came by, did his first ever podcast interview and crushed it. And he said, Matt, he goes, the one thing that really excites me for the future is that before the pandemic, I was always looking at my restaurant. He has 2 locations, one that's, I guess, his main one. The other one's a little smaller, but I'm looking at my main restaurant and I was limited in sales by my 4 walls. That was my mind. My belief was that I was always going to be here, and he hadn't really graduated to some of the digital stuff. When the pandemic hit, all of a sudden third party, all of a sudden online ordering. And now he's like, it's funny because I'm back to my pre-pandemic dining room numbers and I've got all this other stuff. He's like, Matt, I in essence I blew up a 2,000 square foot dining room. It's now 200,000 square feet because I can be at Joe's kitchen table and Donna's kitchen table from my digital footprint. Talk about the technology expanding revenue.
Well, I call it 4-wall economics. It really is. You've got to figure out how to maximize that space. And a restaurant really is a manufacturing facility. You're manufacturing food and you're manufacturing experiences. And the question is that experience in your dining room? Is that experience in somebody's car? Is that experience at somebody's home? Is that experience at somebody's office? Is that experience at somebody's event, a wedding, a funeral, a whatever? I think you've had Sean from Cali Comfort on the show, or Sean. Yep. Like, I mean, when I talked to that dude, like he shut down and he's like, I don't even know. I mean, we were talking mid-pandemic. He's like, I don't even know if I'm going back to opening the doors because at the end of the day, I'm more profitable. I'm serving more guests. I'm taking care of more people, and I'm happier. And so that all being said, for Sean, and I think a lot of people have come to that conclusion. I do find it interesting because pre-pandemic, most people were really, really reluctant. And I don't know why exactly. I don't know if it was related to the fact that they had, too much on their plate. They didn't know where to go. They've been burned by technology providers, but they were so reluctant to look at anything new other than something that might help them run their dining room. And it is amazing how interested people are in all of those other areas. You think about the whole ideas of third-party delivery. Oh, it's too expensive. I used to hear that all the time. Oh, it's too expensive. Okay, figure it out, because you know what? Figure out how to have an online ordering menu that might have a different price differential, or might have only the items that you can serve that travel well, or only have the items that you have high profit margins on, so that you can still do those things. And the things that might be lower profit margins or don't travel well, don't serve those things. Only serve those in your dining room. But people hadn't considered that. And so I love the story that you shared with Manny, because I think the pandemic has caused restaurateurs to really reevaluate what business they're in. They're in the business of creating experience for a guest. And they always just thought about the 4 walls within their dining room prior to, whereas now, if they've done it well and they've been smart about it, they've expanded their offering in significant ways to be able to just blow the doors off of their business, and not even have to have another brick and mortar spot if they don't need to, but oftentimes double their sales.
Yeah. Oh, that was a comment that he made. I've actually heard that from 3 or 4 other people, is that, okay, hey, I've got 40 seats in here and I get to turn these, let's say 10 times a day based on breakfast, lunch, brunch, dinner, all that good stuff. Well, now all of a sudden I just added 20 to-go orders through online. They didn't call my restaurant. They went online, they clicked a button. It came through the exact same ordering system that my dining room does. They make it, they box it. And then all of a sudden, oh, guess what? Now I got 5 from Uber Eats and 7 from Grubhub and 14 from DoorDash. Now you just literally added, and they say, oh, it's the revenue. Like, oh, you're getting 30% less. And I've always talked about, hey, I think in my mind, third party is an acquisition tool. It's your chance to get a customer. But also, if you know that MapPlap sitting in your place costs this much, and Matt Plapp not in your place is going to cost less because the manpower and woman power and some other different elements, it's not really the 30%. It's probably closer to 10 to 15.
Yep.
But you can't always have the most profitable. That if our agency is the same way, our business, we have hundreds of clients. Some of them are this profitable, some of them are this profitable. I'm just looking for the average down the road.
Absolutely. Well, and oftentimes, like we talked about that service station with 6 people sitting around doing nothing.
Yep.
If they're sitting around doing nothing, and you can turn them into revenue generating through those third party delivery apps and or online ordering, the margin might not necessarily even matter because it is additive, especially in those circumstances where I've got a full dining room and I can do that. The one caution that I would tell your audience to consider, though, because this is a very true story about my family, and I've talked about it a couple times on my show, is you've got to do it well. You've got to resource it appropriately. When if you and I were to go out to lunch tomorrow and we were to walk into a restaurant and you walk up to the host stand and they say it's going to be a 45-minute wait, we know that there's a 45-minute wait and they've set the expectation for us. The minute you go to third-party delivery or you do these things and you don't do it well, and oftentimes it's because it's not integrated, it just goes through and they don't tell them it's going to be a 45-minute wait. Now that guest experience, which goes back to what is it that you're creating? And so the story that we tell, there used to be a restaurant that we went to all the time. But I walked in one day, it happened to be a Mexican restaurant, it happened to be on Taco Tuesday, and they were killed with online ordering and third-party delivery. And the experience was so bad that I begged my wife to go back one more time. And we went back, happened to be a Taco Tuesday, and maybe I'm stupid enough to just think, they got to figure it out, 3 or 4 weeks later. But I went back and it was the same experience. And so she just refused to go back. She's like, no, they haven't figured it out until they get back to a dining room where 90% of their orders are coming through the dining room. So I tell you, just as restaurateurs, make sure that you have it resourced appropriately, that your kitchen can staff to it, that you can, have a space to store the food, that the food can get delivered well, that it can be the same quality, or at least, there's a Mediterranean brand on the West Coast called Luna Grill. They did a fantastic job with their packaging. They redid all of their packaging to have hot food hot, cold food cold. So you get a Greek salad with gyros and salad, and they'd be separated by these plastic pieces. It did increase their cost, but you know what? The product was even better than if I was sitting in the dining room. And so all of that to say, just make sure that you do it well, because if you don't, you could end up losing a long-time guest over it.
Yep. And this isn't my forte with regards to food, but this is one thing that drives me crazy. I can't believe I ask this question and I hear from people, they go, no, I haven't done that. I ask restaurant owners all the time when I talk to them, hey, when was the last time you went somewhere and had somebody order third party from your restaurant? What do you mean? Like, have you ever eaten and that the employee didn't know it was you?
Mm-hmm.
And I've never done third party. I'm like, do it.
Yeah.
Order your items, order every menu on the item. See what sucks. I said, because one of my friends' restaurants down the street, he doesn't offer French fries on third party. He's like, Matt, our fries are great in-house. They suck 10 minutes later.
Yep, absolutely.
And the last thing I want to do is have somebody get wings and fries and be like, oh, their fries are terrible. Well, no, they're not. They're just not built to be in a damn car for 40 minutes.
Yeah, or packaged. I mean, In-N-Out did it. You saw at the beginning of the pandemic, they started, Uber Eats started delivering from In-N-Out. They would just go through the drive-through, and In-N-Out sued them because they realized that their food was not going to travel all that well. It wasn't going to travel all that well. I actually have some friends that work there, and I talked to them about the lawsuit. They're like, no, we realize you have to eat In-N-Out food within 5 or 10 minutes of it getting served, because even at traveling 20 minutes home from you driving through the drive-through isn't as good as it needs to be sitting in the parking lot or sitting in the restaurant in the restaurant itself.
So something you said earlier got me thinking, because my wife and I had this conversation about 2 weeks ago. So my wife in the next 6 months to a year is going to open up a retail boutique selling home decor stuff inside your house, all the stuff that we go home to and we cringe because we know something got bought that day. She's got unbelievable style. She knows her stuff. And we're talking about the place that she buys from. She has a place like an hour and a half that she drives to, buys stuff every couple of weeks, loves the place. And she's explaining their process, because I'm telling her what all we're going to be doing. And because she's not a business person, she acknowledges that. She just has a good eye. And she's telling me about the experience of this place that she goes to in just south of Lexington, Kentucky, and how it's handwritten and receipts. And she's talking about how you'll go there and there's like 3 of these plates and you better buy all 3 because they won't be in stock in a week. And I said, Christy, here's the key thing that lady's missing with having that handwritten. What? I said, she doesn't have a history. Mm-hmm. She needs to know how many reefs she sold the 4 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so that next year, instead of ordering 40, she orders 60. And I mean, there's all this data that a point of sale, and I was explaining it to her. And that's one thing that I think a lot of restaurants, I don't go in many restaurants now that don't have a good point of sale. A lot of them have, Toast and things like that. But what I do find out is none of them ever log in and look.
Well, you look back at Gordon Ramsay shows and Robert Irvine shows and John Taffer shows. What do? They walk into the walk-ins, they walk to the bar and they go, this bottle of liquor hasn't been touched in 6 years. What the hell is it still doing here? This case of fish fillets has been in the freezer for 8 years. Why is it still in there? You clearly haven't sold it. Get it off the menu, because you know what, at the end of the day, but that's the power of having that data. That's the power of having the point of sale information to know what's getting ordered, when is it getting ordered. Some of these people and some of the new AI stuff, they're starting to do predictive analytics on when do you actually drop burgers. Some of those big chains know how many burgers they're going to sell by 5-minute increments within, so that they know through the data, so that they get hot food hot and it's fresh. And they throw it away. I mean, McDonald's has done it for years, where they throw away fries, but they'd rather have it done and ready to go, so that the drive-thru's not backed up or whatnot. And so they know through the data that's coming there, how many French fries are they going to sell between 12:06 and 12:10 on a Tuesday with a rainy day out. They can tell you exactly to that number through the data that they have.
That's awesome. And it's there for the little people too. That's what I love about technology now. When we had our boat dealership from 99 to 08, it was around 04, we were buying a new software and you had to buy a server. Like I kind of crack up now. It was $75,000.
Yep. No, absolutely.
For this server and this software. And now today it's like probably $150 a month. But the technology that the little mom and pop burrito shop in the strip mall that have 2 employees and do $600,000 a year, they can get the same technology as that 200 location chain.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of understanding that it's there, and then actually looking at it, open it up and looking and seeing your PMix and see what you sell a lot of and see what you don't sell a lot of. And then, I talk to restaurants all the time that consistently get on there and rearrange things to try and say, okay, their own version of menu engineering with regards to online order, of like, if something's above this or something has bold font, that's the cool thing you can really look at and see.
Well, absolutely. And I think, I oftentimes when I consult with restaurants, whether it's as part of Restaurant Technology Guys or even in my day job, it's like, what are your high profit items? Put those at the top. People always read in the Western Hemisphere from left to right, from top to bottom. So you put those items that you want to turn quickly. There's a reason why Chili's, if you sign up for their loyalty program, gives you free chips and salsa, because then they know when you came in and they know how to get a hold of you. Chips and salsa doesn't cost them a whole lot. And most Mexican restaurants give them to you for free anyway. So they give them to you for free, but you gave them a piece of data, no different than Amazon does, or Facebook does, or whatnot. But figuring out what those items are that you can execute well, because that's the other thing. Go back to the operational methods that that retail shop that you talked about. If the REITs are going to take up, if 60 REITs are going to take up a huge piece of real estate that they don't have, then you got to consider that at the same time within the restaurants. What can I execute well? What's going to turn quickly? How am I going to execute it on time, on hot food hot, cold food cold, in front of the guests at the time that they need it? Those things are also important, because again, you're really delivering an experience within the restaurant and using technology. The other thing that I hear restaurateurs talk about, it's such a burden, it's such a cost. And the truth is restaurant technology is an investment. It's an investment in the future of who you are and what you do. And it tells a lot about your brand and what it is that you do for people when you have it done well, and when you have it done poorly. To your example earlier, it shows. And it shows at the cash register, it shows online, it shows in the reviews, it shows in even the volume that's coming through the door.
Yeah. I told a restaurateur that the other day that he was asking about working with us and our costs and trying to equate it to ROI. And I said, well, everything it depends on how you look at it. I said, I like to break down what we do in 4 to 5 areas. I said, because one of the things we're doing is we're giving you technology that you've never seen before. Now, are you going to have an ROI on that tomorrow? No. But can you look back in 2 or 3 years and realize you're way ahead of the game and you're doing really cool stuff? It's the same as data. Just because somebody gave you their name, phone number, and email and birthday, you're not going to have 10 visits on them tomorrow. You're looking for the 10 visits the next 12 weeks.
Exactly. Well, but people don't even look at total customer acquisition costs. People don't look at total lifetime value. I mean, that's the world that you live in. I know, and they go, oh, well, it cost me $10 to get that customer. But if you take care of them, they're going to deliver $10,000 over the next 3 years, man. There's a guy that wrote a book, the $6,000 egg. I don't know if you've ever read it.
Oh,
It's a guy named Todd Duncan.
okay.
He's a real estate guy. It's a good book if you want to go check it out. He was talking about Hillstone Group, Houston's and those guys. And every month he would spend about $500 at this restaurant brand. So $6,000 a year he averaged spending with this restaurant group. And he went in, and it's a pretty basic story, but I think it goes back to knowing who your customers are and the data that goes along with that. And you know what? At that shop that your wife drives to, I bet you the same 3 ladies work there, and they know your wife when she walks in.
Yep.
But you know what? As you start to get to 2 and 3 and 4 locations, you can't do that. So
Yep.
use the technology to your advantage. When you walked into the same restaurant, the maitre d', the host greeted you as, "Hey, Matt, I know you love the table in the corner." You can do that through technology, and the system can say, "Matt Plopp's walking in. Make sure that you greet him with a smile and ask him about how his consulting group is." But the story goes that for those restaurateurs that haven't read the book, he went in and there was a egg and waffle, chicken and waffle special with a fried egg on top of the egg, but he wanted the hamburger. And so he asked, could they put a fried egg on top of the hamburger? And the chef's like, no, I can't. Or the server says, no, I can't do it. I can't do the egg on top of the burger. He's like, dude, you have an egg, you have the burger, just do it. I don't care. I'll pay for both the chicken and waffles and the burger. It's not about the money. I just want a fried egg on top of my burger. No, we're going to screw up our inventory, this, that, and the other. And so ultimately he got into a big tiff. He then sent a letter to corporate. Corporate sent a note back. I'm sorry, we can't serve you. They pretty much just told him to piss off, and they didn't really care about him. And he looks at it and goes, you know what? And he walked next door to Whole Foods, got him to make him a burger, threw a fried egg on it. And, ultimately, so for what would amount to less than $1 for that egg, he is now no longer a customer of that brand because of the $6,000, the $6,000 that he would have spent on an annualized basis. But I think about that, and I think it's so relevant for our customer base out there that says, understand who those people are. What are they looking for? And quite frankly, and I know this came up in our conversation, how often are they coming back? You and I go to the same 10 restaurants probably with our family all the time. But do they recognize when we're not back? And do they say, hey, you haven't been back in a while? They don't. Yep. And so how often do you know those things? But you probably would gladly sign up for their loyalty program. I saw a post that you made on social media the other day about that person that said, hey, come in for a killer deal, and then they even put in their brand name. It's like so stupid. It's like, come on, man. Talk to me about who you are like a human being. Yep. So, yeah. Sorry, I know I get on these rants from time to time, but it's exciting. It's exciting because I think, Amazon is doing it to us every day. Your wife and I, I'm getting it. My wife, your wife, you are getting recommendations from Google, from Facebook, from Instagram, from all of these different places all day, every day. Why are restaurateurs not using that data to be able to go capture new customers and get them back in, and then figure out, did they convert? And if they did convert, how do I make it so that I'm doing it organically, not through Facebook and having to pay for advertising that way?
Oh, I explained to a restaurant this past week, couple of different conversations. I said, I want to tell you three different journeys. One restaurant, in front of the owner, I signed up for his email program on his website. He had a banner on there. I clicked, I signed up for it. Boom. Next one, which was actually yesterday, I scanned a QR code. I put my email in on the site. I was given a place to leave a review, which I wasn't real fond of because it could be a shitty review. You might want to not give me a link to Google until I tell you how it was. And then I got a text message. And then I explained a third way, the way that we do it and why, because the guy was curious why there's different paths and what I think. I said, well, when somebody joins what we do, we get their name and email instantly and phone number and birthday and their visit frequency. And we also have male or female, so we can break them down. But even outside of that, the minute they click that submit button, they get an email and a text message confirming what they just did.
Yep.
They also get added to a custom audience in Facebook and Instagram. And based on how they use our software, they get a different ad delivered over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Based on what they told us, if they're a new, frequent, or lost customer, they automatically get a different email and text over the next 1 week to 12 months. And so I was explaining this to this guy because I told him, I said, your email tool, I put my email in, nothing happened.
Yeah.
I said, think about the value of one, you did something nobody did. So, high five, because a lot of people aren't gathering data. But now think about getting more data and then having automations built in. And one of the problems I run into with smaller restaurants, and it's kind of both ends. The smaller restaurants we deal mainly with can't get over investment money.
Yeah.
It's like you're starving your restaurant growth
Mhm.
because you will not invest in different tactics. And then the other side of it is a lot of the bigger brands. Like I talked to a brand the other day with like 30 locations, and their marketing director has such an ego.
Oh,
A
yeah.
pizza brand out of Atlanta. I guess there's 50 or 60 brands now, or locations now. And it cracked me up because she thinks she's a genius. And I'm like, lady, what you do one time every week, my team does 1,000 times a day.
Yep.
You're,
Yeah.
you're starving your brand's growth because you won't listen to other people and you're not using the technology correctly.
Yeah, well, and I would say I guess the cherry on top of all of that is once you start to figure out, did that ad work through point of sale data? Very, very true story. We have a brand that's got about 22 restaurants, 22 restaurants, Southern California based brand. They've recently gone to Phoenix and Vegas,
Okay.
and they they implemented a customer database platform, and they realized that there was somebody that was interacting with their brand that was a pharmaceutical rep. And every Tuesday, he would bring this brand to all of the doctors in their deal, and it was a $1,000 order every Tuesday. And he would come into the single store, but he also would frequent the brand over the weekend with his family.
Yep.
And have a $30 or $40 order. And they had no idea that that was that same customer until they tied his credit card number, through the CDP platform and through these advertising things that they had done. Really knowing the point of sale data, tying it to the last four of their credit card, and understanding that that's who that person is, they were able to send him a frequent guest deal to have a meal for free for his family once a month. Because you know what? Every week he was coming in and spending $1,000 to $1,500 with this brand, and he was able to see that through the kind of stuff that you're talking about. But I think way too many, and this brand up until, they grew by 5 or 6 restaurants in through COVID. So even then, there are 20 restaurants. It's not like it was a huge investment. It was a couple $100 a month that they're spending on this. But look at the data that they were able to get to retain that customer, because he doesn't have to spend $1,500 a week to buy food for that pharmaceutical rep, for the doctors. He's buying it because they're now taking care of him and they're keeping him on the hook. And I guarantee you, if he stopped, they would know who he is and they'd be able to go back out and get him and bring him back into the fold to be able to do that.
Yep. I agree completely. So I love it. I want to respect your time. I could talk for days. We'd be sitting here and our family be wondering where we're at.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we tune off, what are one or two things out there you think people need to look at that they might not be paying attention to software wise or technology wise?
Well, I think, and I'll give you the shameless plug that says, if you're not doing some of the stuff that Matt and his team are doing, you have to. And it's imperative, because if you're not doing it, then the brand to your right and the brand to your left in the strip mall or in your town are doing it. They know who their customers are. They're out getting them. They're out acquiring them. So you have to have some form of outbound marketing to know who your customers are and tie it into the data that you're getting. So, all of the basics. And then the second thing that I think is going to come along is I do believe that there will be some form of AI in the next 5 years that is going to ensure that the food that goes out the door, I've been making some big predictions, because one of the biggest things that people are struggling with is that that you order a burger with no tomatoes, but the tomato comes on and you can't retain that guest. When they're in the dining room, it's fine. But when it gets to their house, you can't retain that guest. And so I think looking for those things to ensure that your kitchen is producing the food properly is something that is going to be critical to our brands going into the future in all of these different four-wall economics that we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so.
I agree completely. And I'll tell you what, I'll end with you said using the stuff that we do. It's exciting to me. I told a restaurant owner this morning who's got 6 locations. I had breakfast at one of his places with Doug and Max from my team, and we're talking. I said, you know what excites me the most? And he said, what? I said that I'm telling you as a professional, as an expert, 9.9 out of 10 restaurants I visit, which is a lot every week, aren't doing anything like I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
People walk in, they don't get their data. The people on their website, they don't get their data. The people on Facebook and Instagram don't get their data, and they're not communicating with them correctly. I said, so the minute you put in place 10% of what I'm telling you, either on your own or maybe be smarter and hire us to make it perfect, like I hire you to make me that awesome breakfast sandwich, you're going to be way ahead of them. And in 2 or 3 years, you'll look back and go, wow. And we had a client tell us last May. He called me end of May, almost kind of in tears, said, Matt, you COVID proofed our restaurant. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Am I spraying stuff in there? He's like, no, we went from 99% dine in to 0% dine in. In a matter of 6 weeks, our sales are up 12% from last May when we didn't have any of this stuff last year. And it's because we had invested in technology, invested in collecting data, and invested in somebody doing it for us, because we're good at making pizza. We're not good at making email, text, and marketing campaigns.
Love that. Love that. I wholeheartedly agree. And I applaud what you're doing. I know I've been a fan on social media, and I like a lot of the stuff that you're doing. And if you're not doing that kind of stuff, you have to, because you know what, you're behind the curve without it. Like you said.
I appreciate those kind words. And this is the best place for people to start their journey with you and then find out more about you, restauranttechnologyguys.com. Make sure you get on your podcast platform, follow them, subscribe, download the episodes, check them out. That's all I've got. Anything in closing, Jeremy?
No, have a fantastic day. I appreciate you having me on the show. And we got to schedule some time when you're not on the road driving around in a van, visiting restaurants, to have you on the show again. It's been too long.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. See you, Jeremy.
Good. Thanks, man.